Chapter 1. After the lane grows quiet. By the time the lane grows quiet, it does so slowly. One pair of footsteps passes beneath the window and fades over the old cobbles. A little later, another follows, softer this time, as though the night itself has begun laying a gentle hand over the stones. Somewhere farther off, a door closes. Somewhere nearer, the wind slips around a corner and settles again. Then there is only the narrow street, silvered faintly by moonlight, and the small, time-worn shop with its mullioned glass still holding a low, amber glow. The sign above the door hangs still now. The brass latch has long since ceased its daytime clicking. Behind the glass, the room waits in its familiar arrangement of shadow and lamplight, close and tall, and full of patient things. Inside, the air is warmer than the lane. It carries the dry, comforting scent of old timber, beeswax, paper, ash from the stove, and the faint, sweet trace of wood, long seasoned in drawers and racks. The lamps are shaded in green and cream, their light directed downward in calm circles, leaving the upper reaches of the shelves to rest in duskier gold. Dust drifts there, slow and untroubled, turning lazily whenever the light catches it. The shelves rise nearly to the ceiling. They are crowded with slender boxes, each one fitted neatly beside the next, as though the room has spent years learning how to hold them all. Some boxes are pale, some dark, some tied with ribbon, some plain and smooth with age. They make long, orderly lines along the walls, and the walls, in turn, seem to lean inward with the pleasant closeness of a place that has kept its own counsel for many years. A clock ticks from somewhere behind the counter. It does not tick loudly. It has no wish to disturb the room. It only marks the passing of the night in a small, steady voice. Here, and here, and here, between those soft notes, the old timber gives the occasional quiet creak, settling by degrees. The stove murmurs low from its corner, not so much heating the shop now as keeping company with it. At the center of this hush, the Wandmaker remains. He is elderly, narrow-shouldered, and deliberate in all things. His hair, silver in the lamplight, lies thin and neatly brushed. His hands are lined and careful, with the polished ease of long practice. He has already turned the sign to closed. He has already listened to the last of the lane empty itself. And now, with the outer world folded gently away, he begins the part of the day that belongs only to stillness. He stands for a moment behind the counter, not yet reaching for anything. It is his habit to pause here, to let the room settle around him, to feel the hour arrive fully. His gaze moves, unhurried, over the shelves of boxes, the rail ladder resting against its track, the workbench at the back, the small ranks of tools waiting in their accustomed places. Nothing asks to be hurried. Nothing in this room has ever been improved by haste. The shop knows that, and so does he. He takes off his coat first, easing it from his shoulders with a familiar motion, and hangs it on the peg near the door. Beneath it, his waistcoat is tidy, his shirt sleeves buttoned at the wrist. He smooths one cuff with thumb and forefinger, then the other. Such little gestures seem to tell the room that the evening's true work may begin. When he crosses the floor, the boards answer softly beneath his feet. He passes one hand along the counter's edge as he goes, fingertips brushing wood-worn satin smooth by decades of touch. At the back of the shop, the workbench waits under the nearest lamp. Its surface is clear except for a folded cloth, a closed ledger, and one small ceramic dish glazed the color of cream. Even in rest, the bench looks prepared, as though it has been quietly expecting him. He adjusts the lamp by a fraction. The brass stem gives a tiny sigh. Light gathers more warmly over the bench, over the cloth, over the smooth grain of the wood. In response, somewhere on the high shelves, a slender box gives the faintest shimmer, no more than a passing glint, like moonlight touching a bottle. The Wandmaker does not startle. He only inclines his head, as if acknowledging an old and courteous remark. Then he opens the ledger. The leather cover is worn soft at the corners. The pages within are filled with neat, patient entries in brown ink, each line straight and measured, each note a small remembrance, dates, woods, lengths, flexibilities, quiet observations made in a practiced hand. The Wandmaker turns a few pages, not searching so much as reacquainting himself with the evening. The paper whispers beneath his fingers. After a little while, he closes the book again. Not every night begins with writing. Some nights begin with listening. He rests both hands on the edge of the bench and lowers his head slightly. Around him, the shop continues in its low, companionable sounds. The clock ticking, the stove murmuring, the old boards settling, the dust drifting in the shaded light. Beyond the high windows, the moon has climbed enough to cast a pale bar across the upper wall. It touches the topmost boxes and leaves them cool and silvery above the amber glow below. It is a room made of layers like that. Lamp and moon, warmth and shadow, paper and polished wood, memory and waiting. A room where drawers open softly, where ladders glide without complaint, where tools are returned to place with the same care with which they are taken up. A room where each object seems to have learned the virtue of quiet. The Wandmaker breathes in, slow and easy. Then, at last, he begins to move in the night's private rhythm. He draws the folded cloth toward him and smooths it open with both palms. He glances to the shelves, to the ladder, to the long cabinets where seasoned woods rest out of sight. His expression does not change much. It rarely needs to. Yet, there is a deepening in it, a gentle brightening of attention, as though the hush itself has become a kind of company. Outside, the lane is empty now. Inside, the lamps glow steadily. The clock clock goes on with its tender ticking. Dust turns in the air. The stove keeps its soft murmur, and the old Wandmaker, alone but not lonely in his narrow shop of timber and boxes and patient memory, settles fully into the sheltered hour, inviting the room, and anyone quiet enough to remain, to slow down with him. Chapter 2. Shelves of Seasoned Wood. For a little while, he does not move toward the bench at all. He remains where the room has received him, with one hand resting lightly on the worn counter's edge, and lets his gaze travel upward along the walls that rise so much higher inside than the narrow frontage ever suggests. Shelves climb toward the shadowed ceiling. Drawers sit between them in patient ranks. Long racks, fitted years ago and polished by use, hold their quiet stores behind small brass rails. Everywhere there is wood waiting beside wood, age beside age, season beside season. Each piece kept through summers and winters until its rest has made it ready. The clock continues its soft ticking. The stove gives its low, companionable murmur. Somewhere in the old timber of the shop, a board settles with the faintest creak. And then all is still again. At last, the Wandmaker begins. He takes up the little lamp that hangs nearest the shelves and turns its shade by a careful degree, sending a warmer pool of light along the grain of the drawers. The labels, written in his own neat hand and in older hands before it, show themselves one by one. Ash, willow, holly, yew, hawthorn, alder, rowan, apple, cedar, walnut, pear, cypress. Each name rests on a narrow strip of cream paper, softened by years, as though the words themselves have been seasoned in the dark. He passes his fingertips over the first drawer front before opening it, not from uncertainty, but from habit, from greeting. Then he draws it out. Inside lie lengths of ash, pale and quiet in the lamplight, each one wrapped loosely in cloth or resting in fitted grooves. Ash has a clean look, even in age. Its color is gentle, somewhere between honey and moonlit straw, and its grain runs with a tidy confidence that pleases the eye before the hand even reaches it. He lifts one piece and balances it across both palms. The wood is dry, but not brittle, light, but not insubstantial. It carries the faint scent of a loft where summer air once moved through rafters, and of bark long vanished, and of patient years spent doing nothing at all except becoming itself more fully. His thumb follows the grain. A small smile, almost too slight to be called one, touches his mouth. Ash so often feels eager without being hurried, ready, but not insistent. It has always seemed to him a wood that listens forward. He returns it gently and closes the drawer with a whisper. The rail ladder waits beside the shelves, its narrow wheels tucked into their metal groove. He places one hand on the side rail and guides it along. It glides with a soft, familiar hush, Up he climbs, slowly, steadily, as if ascending not to a height, but into a deeper quiet. The lamp below sends a warm crescent over the rungs. Dust drifts through it in lazy, turning specks. Higher up are the older stores, the woods brought down only when a particular mood of grain is wanted, or when memory suggests a certain shelf and no other. He reaches a drawer marked Willow and pauses before opening it. Willow is never hurried either, though in another way entirely. The pieces within are slender and smooth, their bark long removed, their surfaces fine as old silk beneath the fingers. He lifts one and feels at once its suppleness even now. Not softness exactly, but a yielding grace, as if the wood remembers water, remembers bending beside banks in rain and wind and silver weather. Its scent is cool and faintly green despite the years. And under that, something sweet and clean, like linen dried near an open window. He turns it in the light. Willow often holds a secret shine along the grain, a pale gleam that moves when the hand moves. He has known pieces of willow that seemed shy at first touch, and then, after a pause, almost companionable. This one rests quietly in his hand, content to be considered and no more. Back into its place it goes. The ladder glides again. A little farther along, a little lower now, to Holly. Holly waits in shorter lengths, creamy and close-grained, with a smoothness that feels almost cool, even in the warm room. There is a brightness to Holly that no dim shelf can quite suppress. Even at midnight, under shaded lamps, it appears awake in its own serene fashion. He lifts a piece no thicker than 2 fingers and studies the evenness of it, the fine, nearly hidden patterning beneath the polished surface. Holly has always seemed to him clear-minded wood, not severe, not stern, but very exact in its quietness. It does not blur. It does not wander. It keeps its own center. In his hands, this piece feels balanced from end to end, as though some inward line has already been drawn through it and simply waits to be followed. He sets it aside on a folded cloth draped over the ladder's top rail. Not chosen, not yet, only kept near. Below, the clock ticks on. The stove murmurs. The room remains attentive in the way old rooms can be, holding every small action without comment. At the U drawer, he grows still for a longer moment. The brass pull is cooler here. The wood within is darker, richer, touched with tones of russet and old wine and shadowed gold. U carries depth before it is even handled. It seems to gather light rather than reflect it, and the grain can run in quiet, winding currents that ask for respect. He lifts one seasoned length with both hands, and the weight of it is modest but unmistakable. Denser than ash, more inward than willow. Older in feeling, though not in years. Its scent is warm and resinous, with a trace of earth after rain, and something almost smoky beneath, though no smoke has touched it. His fingers move slowly over a knot of darker figure. Yew does not explain itself quickly. It has patience enough for silence. It asks the same in return. He stands with it for several breaths, simply holding it while dust turns through lamplight, and the old shop keeps its tender watch. Then, very gently, as if tucking a thought back into sleep, he lays the yew down once more. So he goes on among the shelves, drawer by drawer, rack by rack. Hawthorn with its lively, irregular grain, rowan with its fine, even firmness, apple, faintly sweet, close and warm, walnut, darker and thoughtful in the hand. Some pieces he only touches. Some he lifts, turns, and returns. One or two he places aside for later company. No choice is forced. No hour presses him. There is only this slow acquaintance renewed, this nightly conversation with timber that has rested long enough to speak softly. And as he moves through the narrow aisles beneath the shaded lamps, guiding the ladder, opening drawers, reading old labels, the shop seems to settle around him more deeply still, as though every shelf of seasoned wood recognizes the calm of being noticed at last. Chapter 3. The bench and its polished tools. From the drawers of wood and the soft glide of the rail ladder, he returns at last to the bench. It stands where it always has, beneath the steadiest pool of lamplight, its surface rubbed smooth by years of hands, cloth, shavings, and quiet intention. The grain of the old timber shows through the polish in patient lines, darkened where oil has been worked in over decades, pale where the light rests most often. A faint scent of beeswax rises from it, mingling with the dry sweetness of seasoned wood and the low mineral warmth of the stove. Above, dust drifts slowly through the amber glow. Beyond, the clock goes on with its small, even ticking. And somewhere in the wall, an old beam gives a gentle, settling creak. No more than the room adjusting itself for the night. The Wandmaker pauses before sitting. He always pauses here. His hands rest lightly on the bench edge, and for a moment, he simply looks. Not to inspect, not to judge, only to arrive. The bench has its own hush, different from the shelves, different from the drawers. It is a hush made for nearness, for small sounds, for work done close to the body, where breath, wood, and tool all keep the same slow measure. Then he draws out the stool with a soft scrape and lowers himself onto it. The movement is careful, familiar, without haste. His sleeves are already turned back a little. The lamp is near enough. The wood selected for the evening rests to one side, still untouched. Between that waiting piece and his hands, there is only this gentle ritual of readiness, repeated so many times that it has become almost as soothing as the work itself. He reaches first for a folded cloth, It is kept in the shallow middle drawer, among other cloths that have grown soft from washing and use. He chooses one by touch rather than sight, lifting a square of cream linen worn nearly silky at the corners. With it, he wipes the bench in long, unbroken strokes, gathering the finest dust, the faintest settled ash, the memory of earlier shavings. The cloth whispers over the wood, once from left to right, then back again. Then in smaller circles, where the lamp throws its brightest oval. He turns the cloth, folds it, smooths the surface once more. Nothing urgent, nothing dramatic. Only the pleasure of making a clear place, clearer still. When the bench is ready, he begins to lay out the tools. They do not come all at once. Each has its moment, its place, its small return to usefulness. From a narrow drawer lined in faded green baize, he lifts a pair of calipers. Their brass has been polished by handling more than by cloth, and the hinges move with a tiny, contented resistance. He opens them and closes them once, not to test them exactly, but to feel the old, familiar motion in his fingers. Then he sets them down to the right of the lamp, where the light can catch the curved arms. Next comes a slim knife, its handle dark and glossy from years of palms. He does not hold it by the blade or examine its edge in any showy way. He simply takes up a leather strop from the bench peg, draws the blade along it once, then again, slow and even, the sound no louder than a breath passing over paper. Satisfied, he lays the knife beside the calipers, straightened neatly with one fingertip, until it lies exactly as he likes it. A second knife follows, narrower still, made for finer work. Then a small plane no longer than his hand, its wooden body mellow with use. He turns it over, loosens the iron by a hair, tightens it again. A thumb brushes away an invisible speck from the mouth. Set down, aligned, ready. From another drawer, he gathers the rasps, one fine, one finer. Their handles are pale boxwood, smoothed by decades, and faintly warm from the room. He taps each lightly against his palm to free any lingering dust from the teeth, then places them on a folded cloth so they will not mark the bench. Beside them, he sets a burnisher, a slender awl, and a tiny brush with soft bristles for clearing channels and grain. The arrangement grows slowly, and with it, the sense of evening work taking shape. Tool by tool, the bench becomes orderly in a way that is almost musical. Brass near the lamp, blades within easy reach, rasps to the side, brush above, cloth below, empty space at the center, preserved for the wood itself, as though the whole bench is quietly making room for what is to come. He reaches then for the jars. They stand on the back shelf, each one clear and lidded, each one waiting for what the night may give. One for pale shavings, one for darker curls, one for the finest dust, almost like powder, gathered from rasp and smoothing cloth. He brings them down in turn and sets them along the rear edge of the bench. Glass touches wood with the faintest click. In the lamplight, they gleam softly, simple and useful, and already they seem to hold a little of the room's patient expectancy. For a while, there is only the sound of his hands at work in small preparations. A drawer opens with a whisper and closes with the same. A cloth is folded once more. A tool is shifted half an inch. The stool creaks gently beneath him. The stove murmurs low. The clock keeps on. Through the high windows, moonlight lies pale and thin against the upper shelves, where the long ranks of slender boxes rest undisturbed. He takes up another cloth, this one finer, and begins to polish the tools already laid out. Not because they are dull, not because they need rescuing. It is simply part of the rhythm, brass brightened with a circular motion. Wooden handles rubbed until the grain glows. Steel wiped free of any trace of oil too thick or dust too fine. He works with the ease of long acquaintance, each gesture exact without becoming rigid, tender without becoming precious. These are not ornaments. They are companions to labor, and he tends them with the same calm respect he gives the woods in their drawers and the boxes on their shelves. Now and then, as the cloth passes over metal, a tiny point of light slips across the bench. Once, from somewhere among the shelves behind him, there comes the faintest shimmer, almost too soft to name, as though a finished wand resting in its box has turned in sleep and settled again. The Wandmaker does not look up at once. When he does, it is only with a small, knowing stillness before his attention returns to the bench. At last, everything is in its place. The tools lie ready beneath the shaded lamp. The jars wait, open but empty. The cloths are folded. The center of the bench remains clear, warm in the amber light, as inviting as a quiet path laid through snow before the first step. The selected piece of wood rests nearby, not yet lifted, not yet measured, but already included in the order of things. And so he sits for another brief moment in the company of his polished tools, his hands resting loosely, his shoulders eased, while around him the old shop breathes in timber creaks, stove warmth, drifting dust, and the steady tick of time. The work has not begun in earnest, and yet something has already been completed. A place has been made. A silence has been shaped. The night, little by little, is ready to receive the careful work of his hands. Chapter 4. Listening to the grain. For a little while longer he does not move. He lets the bench remain as it is. The cream linen cloth folded to one side, the brass calipers catching a muted crescent of lamplight, the slim knife lying quiet beside the small plane and the fine rasp. The selected wood waits near his right hand, pale where the lamp reaches it, softly shadowed at either end. Beyond the bench, the shelves rise into dimness, and the clock keeps its patient measure. and somewhere in the old timber, a board settles with a sound as gentle as a sigh. At last, the Wandmaker draws the piece nearer. It is ash tonight. Ash from the longer seasoning drawer, lifted down with care, carried to the bench as one might carry a remembered thought. He turns it once between his fingers before lifting it into the brighter center of the lamp's circle. The wood is slender already, but not yet a wand. It is promise still, a length of pale grain, straight in one place, faintly wandering in another, with tiny variations that only age, touch, and lamplight reveal. His thumb passes slowly along it. He does not press. He only feels. The surface is dry and smooth with seasoning, though not lifeless. There is a faint warmth where his hand has rested, a light scent of loft air and old bark, and beneath that, something clean and almost powder fine, as if the wood remembers winter light. He turns it again, watching how the grain catches and releases the glow. On one side, the lines run steady as quiet rain. On the other, they bend a little, enough to ask for notice, enough to ask not to be hurried past. The Wandmaker gives that small bend his attention. This is how the work begins, and has always begun, not with cutting, but with listening, not with force, but with agreement. He holds the ash at eye level for a moment, then lowers it and rolls it lightly against the bench pad beneath his palm. The movement is nearly soundless. Only the clock speaks, and the stove murmurs low in its iron cradle, and dust drifts slowly through the lamplight, like pale thoughts crossing a still mind. Then he reaches for the knife. Its handle settles into his hand, as if it has been waiting there all evening. With his other hand, he steadies the wood and places the blade at one end, not to carve deeply, only to begin. The first shaving lifts in a thin curl, so slight it seems more breath than wood. It falls beside his wrist. Another follows, and another, each one pale as oat straw, softening the bench with a little crescent of ash. The sound is scarcely more than a whisper. A gentle draw, a pause, a gentle draw again. He works in short passages, turning the wood often. The blade follows the grain where it runs true and eases away where it asks for patience. When he comes to the place where the lines bend, he does not insist on straightness. He changes the angle of his wrist by the smallest degree. He lets the knife skim rather than bite. The shaving there comes away finer, almost translucent. He watches it coil upon itself and settle among the others. Now and then, he stops entirely. In those pauses, the room seems to lean closer, though nothing stirs except the dust and the low lamp flame behind its shade. He rests the wood across his fingers and touches the newly pared surface with his thumb. Smooth, then smoother still. Not finished, not nearly, but beginning to answer. A little less hidden than before. He sets the knife down and takes up the fine rasp. Its teeth make a softer sound than one might expect, more hush than scrape. A dry, even murmur that blends with the ticking clock until the two seem part of one old rhythm. He passes it lightly along the length, then turns the ash a quarter turn and repeats the motion. Pale powder gathers where the rasp has been. He brushes it aside with the backs of his fingers. The scent rises a little more clearly now. Clean, woody, faintly sweet. Familiar as a room opened after long winter. Again, he pauses. The Wandmaker has long since learned that wood does not only reveal itself in motion, it reveals itself in stillness too, in the resting of the hand, in the waiting after a pass of blade or rasp, in the quiet moment when one feels whether the shape has gone a little too far or not far enough, or simply where it ought to be for now. For now, this is enough. He reaches for the calipers and measures without fuss, checking one end, then the middle, then the taper beginning to emerge under his hands. The brass arms kiss the wood and part again. Satisfied, he lays the tool back in its place. The ash is turned once more beneath the lamp, and in that turning, there is the first suggestion of character. A handle not yet fully found. A line of balance only beginning to gather itself. A slenderness that seems less imagined now and more quietly present. Near the shelves, somewhere beyond the bench, there comes the faintest, delicate sound, like a tiny glass note touched and gone. It is so soft that it might be the cooling of the lamp chimney, or the old shop settling into itself. Yet, the Wandmaker's mouth eases at one corner. Not quite a smile, only recognition. In this room, approval is seldom louder than that. He resumes with the small plane, using it only where the grain welcomes it. A curled ribbon lifts, longer this time, falling over the edge of the bench to join the others on the floorboards below. The rail ladder stands silent against its brass track. The shelves of slender boxes keep their watch. The stove breathes warmth. The clock goes on. And under the shaded lamp, in the shelter of all that patience, the ash grows gradually more itself. Not quickly, never quickly. A pass of the blade, a turn of the wrist, a touch of the thumb, a pause. The grain leads, and he follows. Chapter 5. Drawers of rare and quiet things. The grain leads, and he follows. For a little while longer he remains at the bench, the pale ash resting across the cream linen cloth, the fine rasp set aside, the brass calipers catching a soft crescent of lamplight. The shaped length is still only partly itself. It has begun to narrow, begun to balance, begun to show the quiet line it means to keep. Yet, there is another part of the work that does not live in the grain alone. And after a patient pause, the Wandmaker lets his hands become still. The clock goes on ticking in its measured way. The stove murmurs low behind its little iron door. Dust turns slowly in the shaded light, and somewhere high in the shelves, an old timber gives a small, familiar creak, as if settling deeper into the night. He draws a breath that seems to gather the room into him, and then he rises. The stool gives the faintest whisper across the floorboards. He turns back his sleeves a little farther, though they are already neat enough, and carries the ash wand blank in both hands, as one might carry a narrow, sleeping thing. He does not return it to the long drawers of seasoned wood. Instead, he lays it gently on a folded square of cloth at the far end of the bench, where the lamp falls more softly and the polished tools wait without hurry. Then, with the same steady care, he crosses to a lower bank of cabinets built into the wall beneath the shelves of slender boxes. These drawers are smaller than the others. Their fronts are darkened by years of touch, their little brass pulls rubbed bright at the edges. No label hangs from them in the open way that the wood drawers do. Their order is known by memory, by long use, by the quiet map of the hand. He rests his fingers on one pull, then another, not searching, only arriving. The first drawer opens with a muted wooden sigh. Inside, against a lining of faded velvet, lie several lengths of unicorn hair, each one pale as winter light on water. They are not stark white. In the lamplight, they carry soft shades within them: cream, silver, a hint of moon pearl, the color of mist where dawn has only just begun to think of rising. He reaches in with 2 fingers and lifts one strand no thicker than sewing silk. It is cool at first touch, and then, almost immediately, not cool at all, but softly temperate, as if it has remembered the warmth of his hand and answered it. It does not gleam sharply. Rather, it seems to gather light and hold it in a gentle way. The Wandmaker lets the strand rest across his fingertips. It has a quiet strength to it, a suppleness without weakness, a smoothness that offers no resistance. He has known this feeling for many years, and still he receives it with the same small inward bow of attention. Some woods welcome such still brightness. Some do not. Holly often listens well to it. Willow may, in certain moods. A fine, clear ash can sometimes carry it beautifully if the grain remains honest and the balance true. He does not decide. He only feels. He only lets the possibility come near and stand beside the shaped ash on the bench in his mind. After a little while, he returns the hair to its velvet bed. The drawer slides closed with scarcely a sound. His hand moves to the next. This one he opens even more slowly. Within, wrapped in layers of soft, dark tissue, rests a phoenix feather. Not the whole plume, but several carefully prepared lengths, each with its own curve and luster. Each one held apart from the others so that nothing is pressed or bent, even before he touches it. The air seems to alter by a degree so small that it could almost be imagined. The room is still warm from the stove. Yet this is another kind of warmth. Finer, brighter, as if a hidden ember has been breathed upon somewhere far away. He lifts a feather segment with great delicacy. Its shaft is light, but not fragile. The barbs lie close and smooth, burnished with bronze, amber, and a red so deep it darkens toward russet in shadow. When he turns it beneath the lamp, a glint passes through it, like the memory of flame seen through closed eyes. Not heat exactly, not fire exactly, only the idea of both, sleeping. The Wandmaker's lined thumb strokes once along the feather's length. It gives the faintest tremor, or perhaps only settles more fully into his hold. A phoenix feather has its own inward weather. It does not merely rest where it is placed. It seems to wait, and while it waits, it listens. There are woods that answer such listening with grace, and woods that answer with too much echo. You can deepen around it. Willow may soften it. Ash, if chosen carefully, may lend it swiftness without strain. He thinks of the ash wand blank on the cloth. Pale wood, subtle bend, grain that prefers to guide rather than be guided. He inclines his head, as though acknowledging a conversation too quiet for words. Then he wraps the feather once more and closes the drawer. The third drawer is narrower, set slightly deeper in the cabinet. When he draws it open, the velvet within is darker, and the contents are coiled in ordered loops, each one secured with silk thread. Dragon heartstring has a different presence from the others. Even at rest, it seems denser, more decided, as though weight can belong not only to matter, but to intention. He selects one length and lays it across his palm. It is smooth, but not silky. There is firmness in it, a contained vigor, a strength that does not pretend to be anything else. In the lamplight, it shows a deep, burnished color, somewhere between copper and old wine, with a faint inner sheen that comes and goes when he breathes. The Wandmaker does not hold it long. Respect here means brevity as much as care. Some woods steady such force. Some brighten under it. Some become too loud. Yew has old ways with it. Walnut, in another drawer and another night, might answer well. Ash can, though only when the ash itself has a sure center and no wish to wander. He considers this without pressing. He has learned that the best pairings do not arrive when summoned. They arrive when the room is quiet enough to receive them. So he stands in that quiet. Behind him, the bench waits, the shaped ash resting where he left it. Around him, the shelves rise into shadow, lined with boxes and years. The clock ticks on. The stove keeps its low, companionable murmur. Dust drifts and settles. The shaded lamp lays a pool of amber over wood, brass, velvet, and his careful hands. At last, he returns the heartstring to its place and closes the drawer. For a moment, his fingers remain on the brass pull, not choosing, not yet, only holding near him the temperaments he has touched, the gentle clarity of unicorn hair, the embered listening of phoenix feather, the steady, hidden force of dragon heartstring. Quiet things, all of them, though each quiet in its own way. Then he turns back toward the bench, carrying no core in his hands, only the patience to wait until one belongs. Chapter 6. Pairings chosen by patience. Then he turns back toward the bench, carrying no core in his hands, only the patience to wait until one belongs. The ash blank rests where he left it, on the folded cream cloth at the far end of the bench, pale beneath the shaded lamp. Its surface has already begun to gather the soft sheen that comes from handling, from being turned and considered, from living for a while in warm lamplight. The Wandmaker draws his stool in with a small scrape that is hardly a sound at all, and sits. The clock goes on ticking. The stove murmurs low in its corner. Somewhere high in the shelves, old timber gives a quiet, settling sigh. He does not reach at once. Instead, he folds his hands for a moment and lets his eyes rest on the ash. He has learned, over many years, that choosing is often gentler when it begins in stillness. Wood and core are not matched by haste. They are introduced. They are listened to. They are allowed to dislike one another in peace, and to agree in peace too. At length, he lifts the ash blank again. His thumb follows the subtle line in the grain, that slight bend he noticed before. Not a flaw, but a preference. A way the wood inclines, if it is not argued with. The wand blank is light in his hand, eager without being hurried, steady without stiffness. He turns it once beneath the lamp. Dust drifts through the yellow glow. The brass calipers lie nearby, quiet and ready. But for now, he does not measure. Tonight is not for numbers. From the cabinet of small drawers, he brings first the unicorn hair, laid across a square of dark velvet. Even here at the bench, it seems to keep its own pale light, hardly brighter than moonlight on a basin of water. He does not set it into the wood. He only holds the ash in one hand and the velvet in the other, bringing them near, then apart, then near again, in the way one might bring two notes close enough to hear whether they settle into harmony. The room remains very still. The ash seems to brighten in the lamplight, but perhaps that is only the turning of his wrist. The unicorn hair lies smooth and composed, with that quiet strength he knows so well. Honest wood, he thinks, gentle core. There are many wands that have begun this way, many good ones. Yet, his hand does not come to rest. Something in the pairing is almost right, and almost is not the same as right. He inclines his head, accepting the small uncertainty without disappointment, and returns the velvet square to the open drawer. He leaves the drawer open a moment longer, then closes it softly, and opens another. Phoenix feather is never so still, even when it lies at rest. This one is a narrow plume, copper at one edge and deep gold at the other, with a hidden ember color where the lamplight catches. The Wandmaker handles it with the same measured care, though its nature is different. Warmth lingers around it. Not heat exactly, more the memory of heat, banked and patient, as if some bright morning had folded itself into the feather and chosen to remain there. Again, he brings wood and core into quiet company. Ash in his left hand, feather in his right. The pale grain and the warm gleam, the slight bend in the wood, the inward brightness of the feather. He waits. He has spent enough years at this bench to know that waiting is part of the work, as real emotion as carving or polishing. Sometimes a good pairing gives itself at once. More often, it arrives slowly, like a thought crossing a room. He turns the ash a fraction. The feather trembles once, almost too lightly to see. A faint shimmer passes along the wood and is gone. The Wandmaker's expression softens, though he does not yet decide. Phoenix feather can answer readily and still not settle. It can admire what it does not wish to live with. He has known that too. So he sets both down. He breathes. The clock ticks on. His hand goes at last to the drawer below, where dragon heartstring is kept coiled in dark silk. This core he uncovers with particular steadiness, not because it is dangerous here in his hands, but because it carries a denser kind of presence. Rich, deep, and quietly potent. It seems to gather the lamplight rather than reflect it. The ash wand blank feels almost airy by comparison when he lifts it again. He does not need long. Even before he brings them close, he can feel the difference in their temperaments. The ash remains true, open-grained, responsive. The heartstring is strong in a more insistent way, with a pull toward force, toward depth, toward a firmer answering. Neither is wrong. They are simply not inclined toward one another. He smiles to himself, a small, private smile, and wraps the heartstring once more in silk. Some refusals are as useful as any agreement. They narrow the field. They quiet the room inside a choice. Back at the bench, the ash lies alone again. He smooths the cloth beside it with the flat of his hand. Then, after a little while, he rises and returns to the cabinet, not to seek a new rarity, but to revisit what was already almost right. He opens the drawer of unicorn hair and pauses. He opens the drawer of phoenix feather and pauses there too. The old timber of the cabinet smells faintly of resin and beeswax. The brass pulls are cool beneath his fingers. Behind him, the shelves of slender boxes stand in patient rows, and the rail ladder waits against its track like a resting companion. This time he takes the feather back to the bench and lays it beside the ash without touching the two together. Side by side, they seem less opposed than before, not matched by likeness, but by contrast, held gently. Pale wood, warm core, a clear grain meeting a hidden ember. He sits with them a long while, doing nothing more than keeping them company. And after that long while, the answer does not arrive as a spark or a sign worth naming. It comes only as ease. His shoulders settle. His hands no longer hover. The ash, when he lifts it, feels as though it has been waiting for this warmer inward life. The feather, when he gathers it up, no longer seems merely bright. It seems willing. Between his fingertips, there is the faintest thread of warmth. And somewhere among the shelves, a finished wand gives a tiny, glass-soft chime, as if in distant approval. The Wandmaker does not hurry to begin the binding. He only nods once, almost imperceptibly, and lays both chosen pieces on the cream cloth in the center of the lamplight, where they may rest together for a little before the next careful step. Chapter 7. Binding wood to hidden fire. For a little while he leaves them there, the pale ash and the narrow plume, side by side upon the cream cloth beneath the shaded lamp. Nothing in the room asks to be rushed. The clock continues its small, faithful ticking. The stove gives its low murmur from the far side of the shop. Somewhere high among the shelves, old timber settles with a quiet, familiar creak, as if the room itself were easing more comfortably into the hour. The Wandmaker sits with his hands folded loosely before him, not touching either piece. He has learned, over many years and many nights, that there is a kind of work done before the fingers move. It is a work of waiting, of letting one thing become aware of another. The ash, shaped now to a slender grace, keeps its faint, honest bend. The feather, copper and deep gold in the lamplight, seems at rest, and yet not wholly still, as though some gentle warmth lingers in its fine barbs. At last, he reaches for the tools that belong to joining. From one drawer comes a narrower knife than the first, keen and bright, its handle worn to satin by long use. From another, he takes a fine awl, a slender burnisher of polished bone, and a shallow dish no larger than his palm. He sets them down one by one in their accustomed places, each making only the softest contact with the bench. Then he draws the ash piece closer and turns it slowly between finger and thumb, studying where the line of the grain will best welcome what is to be placed within. He does not force a path. He finds it. The first incision is so light, it is almost only a thought made visible. The knife tip follows the grain in a straight, careful line, opening a narrow seam along the heart of the wood. Pale curls rise, thin as dry petals, and settle beside his wrist. He pauses often. The lamp throws a warm oval over the bench, and in that circle of light, the ash shows its quiet pattern, close and clean, with that one slight wandering in it that he has honored from the beginning. Again the knife moves. Again it rests. Then the fine awl deepens the channel by degrees, not hollowing so much as persuading, making room where room wishes to be made. The Wandmaker's breathing stays even. His shoulders, narrow beneath his turned-back sleeves, remain relaxed. The old shop around him seems to listen with him. The shelves of slender boxes, the rail ladder sleeping against its track, the dust drifting lazily in the warm air. When the channel is ready, he lifts the ash and tilts it toward the light, examining the interior line. Satisfied, he lays it down and reaches for the phoenix feather. Even now, he handles it as though it were both delicate and enduring, which, in its way, it is. His fingertips smooth the plume lightly from stem to tip. Copper glows into gold. Gold deepens to a small ember red where the barbs overlap. There is warmth in it, but not a fierce warmth. It is the warmth of a coal that has settled into itself, steady and inward, enough to heat cold hands if cupped patiently. He selects from the length only what is needed, no more. The prepared filament is fine, almost impossibly fine, and when he lifts it, it catches the lamplight in a thread of muted fire. For a moment, it hovers between his hands. Then, with the same unshowy care with which he has done every other part of the work, he lowers it into the opened ash. The room does not change all at once. There is only a small stillness, deeper than the one before. The ticking clock seems to recede. The stove's murmur softens. The Wandmaker keeps one hand beneath the wood, the other resting lightly along its length, and waits while wood and hidden fire make their first quiet acquaintance. A faint warmth reaches his palm. Not heat, not anything sharp, only a gentle spreading, as if the ash has remembered sunlight stored long ago in living grain, and the feather has answered from within with a little banked brightness of its own. He inclines his head. The corners of his mouth soften, though no smile fully forms. Approval in this room is seldom louder than that. Now the seam must be closed. He uses the burnisher first, guiding the wood inward with repeated, patient strokes. The ash yields neatly, drawing itself around the hidden core. Then comes a resin prepared long before this night, warmed in the little dish until it loosens to clarity. He applies only the thinnest trace, enough to seal and steady, enough to keep harmony where harmony has been invited. His thumb smooths along the length. The seam all but disappears. He leaves it to rest for a few measured breaths while he gathers the pale shavings into the little jar waiting nearby. Their dry whisper is soft against the glass. When he returns to the wand, he takes up the finest rasp and passes it lightly along the surface, scarcely removing anything at all, only refining, only listening through touch. The slight bend remains. The balance settles. Then the polishing begins. A fresh fold of linen, a little beeswax, the slow turning of the slender length under his hand. Ash brightens softly as he works, not to a hard shine, but to a living glow, like cream warmed by amber light. Over and over he turns it, cloth passing from handle to tip, from tip to handle, until the wood feels less made than awakened. At the final pass, something very small answers. Not a flash, not a flare, merely a shimmer that moves beneath the surface and is gone almost before it can be named. With it comes a tiny sound, finer than glass, finer than a spoon touching china somewhere in another room. A single clear chime, so light it might have been imagined, if not for the warmth that follows, brief and certain against his fingertips. The Wandmaker stills. He holds the finished wand across both palms and lets it rest there in the center of the lamplight. The ash lies calm and true. The hidden feather is no longer separate, no longer a thing laid beside it on cloth, but a quiet life within the grain. Around him, the shop resumes its old, gentle breathing. Clock, stove, timber, dust, shelves. After a while, he sets the wand upon the cream linen, where it gleams faintly in the hush, and the bench, the tools, and the waiting room seem to grow softer around it. Chapter 8. Boxes, Labels, and Old Memory. After a while, he sets the wand upon the cream linen, where it gleams faintly in the hush, and the bench, the tools, and the waiting room seem to grow softer around it. For some moments more, the Wandmaker only looks at it. The shaded lamp lays a warm oval of light across the bench. Within it, the pale ash shows its quiet grain, and now and then, when his eyes rest there without hurry, a very small shimmer passes along the polished length, no brighter than breath on glass. It is not a display. It is only a sign of settled agreement, of wood and hidden fire lying peaceably together. The old craftsperson lets that small sign be enough. Then, with the same steadiness that has guided every part of the evening, he reaches for the next calm task. At the far end of the bench, beneath a lower shelf, a stack of narrow boxes waits in patient order. They are made of stiff board, wrapped long ago in cream and dove-gray papers, each one fitted to the slender measure of a wand. Their lids are plain, their corners neat, their usefulness softened by years. He draws the top box toward him and opens it with a whisper of card against card. Inside lies a folded lining of pale cloth, already cut, but not yet settled into place. He smooths it with 2 fingers. The cloth is fine and cool, with a faint scent of starch and lavender from whatever cupboard it once rested in. He presses it into the base of the box, easing the corners down, making a small hollow where the wand will lie. The movement is simple. Press and smooth. Fold and smooth. A little crease attended to. A soft edge turned under. Then stillness again. The clock ticks on the wall. The stove murmurs low. Somewhere above, old timber gives a tiny creak, and then is quiet. He lifts the ash wand at last. It is lighter now than it seemed in the making, as finished things often are. The slight bend remains, not corrected, only honored. The polish catches the lamp in a muted line. When he lowers it into the cloth-lined box, it comes to rest as though it has always known this narrow space would one day be waiting. For a breath or two, he leaves his hand beside it, not touching, only near. Then he closes the lid halfway, opens it once more, and adjusts the cloth by a fraction, because habit likes things exact. This time, the fit pleases him. He closes the box fully and lays both palms lightly over the top. Near the boxes stands a shallow tray of ribbons, sorted by width and shade. Most are faded from years of lamplight. Soft cream, dusky blue, moss green, brown as tea. He chooses a narrow cream ribbon and wraps it once around the box, then once again, tying it in a modest knot rather than a flourish. The ends are trimmed already. They lie flat and quiet. Beside the tray is a small stack of labels cut from thick paper. He takes one up and turns to the inkwell and pen kept in their accustomed place on the right side of the bench. The pen's wooden holder is worn smooth where fingers have rested over many years. He dips the nib, waits for the smallest excess drop to gather and fall back, and writes in a hand so practiced it seems less written than placed. Ash, phoenix feather, length noted with care, flexibility noted with care, date in the small, neat figures of the present season. The ink shines wetly for a moment. He leaves the label beside the lamp to dry, and while it does, his gaze travels upward. Shelves rise above him into the dimness, rank upon rank of slender boxes. Some are newer, their paper still clean at the edges. Some have softened with decades, their labels yellowed to the color of old cream. Some bear his present hand, steady and spare. Others carry an earlier hand, a little narrower, a little darker in ink, belonging to the one who taught him where to set a blade, how long to season ash, how to wait through an indecisive silence without disturbing it. Here and there, on the highest shelves, are labels so old the ink has browned, and the corners curled inward like dry leaves. The rail ladder stands nearby, its brass fittings dull in the low light. He does not climb it now. He only looks. Every box holds a future not yet arrived, a hand not yet extended, a first touch not yet felt. The room is full of these quiet not yets, resting one above another in ordered rows. There is comfort in that, not urgency, not expectation, only continuation. Work made ready. Choices waiting for their hour. When the label has dried, he ties it beneath the ribbon. The paper taps softly against the box side. Then he rises from the stool, narrow shoulders easing back, and carries the finished box to the shelves. His steps are small and soundless on the old boards. At the shelving nearest the bench, he finds an open place among others of similar length. For a moment, the box remains in his hands while he reads the neighboring labels without fully meaning to. Holly and unicorn hair, willow and dragon heartstring. You, long ago, in an older script. Familiar names, familiar pairings. Some he remembers in detail. The weather on the night they were finished. The scent of the wood as it yielded under the knife. The exact tone of a faint, answering chime. Others have softened into the larger memory of the craft. Not lost, only folded gently into it. He slides the new box into place. Cardboard brushes cardboard. The shelf accepts the weight. And from somewhere very close by, perhaps from the box itself, perhaps from the polished rows around it, comes the slightest sound, almost not a sound at all, like a tiny glass note touched and gone. The Wandmaker stands still long enough to hear the quiet after it. Then he returns to the bench where the ledger waits. Its leather cover is rubbed smooth at the corners and darkened by hands over many years. When he opens it, the spine gives a soft sigh. Page after page lies filled with careful entries. Each line a small record of wood, core, measure, balance, date. The paper smells faintly of dust and ink, and the dry sweetness of old glue. He turns to the next blank line and copies the details there in the same composed hand. Nothing more than that, nothing less. When the line is complete, he blots the ink, closes the ledger gently, and leaves his palm resting on the worn cover as the lamp hums faintly above. The clock keeps its patient time, and the sleeping shelves hold their many remembered names in the dark. Chapter 9. Tidying the Lamplit workshop. For a little while, he remains as he is, with his hand upon the ledger, and his head bowed slightly beneath the shaded lamp. The ink has dried. The ribboned box rests nearby, neat and pale against the deeper color of the bench. Around him, the shop keeps its familiar quiet. The stove murmuring low behind its grate. The clock measuring out its small, even moments. The old timbers answering now and then with a soft, sleepy creak. Then, with no haste at all, the Wandmaker lifts his hand from the worn cover and begins the last work of the night. He reaches first for the pen. Its nib is wiped with a square of linen and set back in its tray on the right side of the bench. The inkwell is stoppered and returned to its place by touch more than sight, as though the wood of the shelf and the shape of the glass have long since learned one another. He smooths the edge of the blotting paper, aligns it with the ledger, and slides both a little farther from the center of the bench, where the lamplight is strongest. The finished box he lifts in both hands. It is light, as such boxes always are, but not empty light. It has the small, settled weight of something complete. He holds it for a breath, perhaps two, feeling through cardboard and lining the quiet presence within. Ash, slight bend preserved. Phoenix warmth banked and resting. The cream ribbon lies flat beneath his thumb. Then he rises from the stool with care and turns toward the shelves. His steps are soft on the old boards. Dust drifts through the yellow light and then out of it again. Along the wall, the slender boxes stand in their ordered ranks, pale labels facing outward, each one no larger than a thought kept safe. He finds the waiting place without searching. The new box slides into the narrow gap left for it, paper brushing paper with the faintest whisper. For an instant, from somewhere among the shelves, or perhaps only from the stillness itself, there comes a tiny, glass-fine chime. Not a sound to disturb the room, only a note of fitting. He assigns his head, about as a moment on the row before withdrawing them. When he returns to the bench, the true tidying begins. It is simple work, and because it is simple, it asks for no strain. The knife is cleaned first, its slim blade drawn carefully through folded linen until no trace of resin or dust remains. The dark handle receives a brief polishing from the heel of his palm. It goes into its drawer, where green baize and old wood wait for it. The brass calipers follow, their hinge eased shut, their cool arms laid down in the shallow compartment shaped by years of use. The awl, the bone burnisher, the fine rasp, the small plane, each is lifted, wiped, examined in the lamp's amber light, and returned. One by one, the bench grows clearer. The shavings come next. Pale ash curls, thin as petals and dry as old paper, lie gathered in light drifts along the cloth and in the hollows of the work surface. He brushes them together with a soft hand broom whose bristles have worn blunt and kind. They make a faint, papery hush as they move. Some fall into a waiting jar, some into a wider tin kept for the stove. Nothing wasted, nothing hurried. A stray glimmer of feather down catches near the cloth's fold. Copper, gold, hardly more than a memory of warmth. And he lifts it delicately between finger and thumb before placing it in a small, lidded dish. He folds the cream linen cloth at last, not sharply, but along the lines it has learned over many nights. The cloth still holds a little scent of beeswax and wood dust, and the warmer trace of his hands. It returns to the middle drawer, where it settles among its companions in quiet cream layers. The drawers are closed, one after another, with a practiced gentleness. Narrow drawer, shallow drawer, lower drawer, cabinet door, brass pull, soft click. The sounds are small and orderly, each one answered by the room's deepening calm. The wall cabinet of rare things is checked with special care. His hand lingers on the dark wood front before he leaves it shut, all within resting again in velvet dimness. At the far side of the shop, the rail ladder still stands a little way from its home, where it had been left earlier, beneath the high shelves. He crosses to it slowly, The stove's warmth fades a little there, and a thread of cooler night air slips down from the upper window, touching his sleeve, moving the lamplit dust. He places both hands on the ladder's side rails and guides it along the brass track. It glides with the old, familiar sound of wood and wheel and polished metal working easily together. Not a scrape, not a jolt. Only a long, soft run, and then a gentle settling as it reaches its resting place. He steadies it for a moment after it has stopped, as though making sure it is fully at ease. The room seems larger once the ladder is still. He stands, listening. To the clock, to the stove, to the faint stir at the window where night presses cool against the panes, to the shelves, tall and patient, carrying their slender sleep. The lamp throws its circle over the cleared bench, and beyond that circle, the corners of the shop deepen into brown shadow, familiar and untroubled. At last, he takes up the hand brush again and gives the bench one final sweep, slower now than before. The last dust is gathered. The last curl of shaving is coaxed away. His movements have grown very economical, very light, as if the room itself has taught his hands to rest while they work. When nothing remains out of place, he leaves both palms on the smooth edge of the bench and lets the quiet settle around him once more. The workshop, tidied and warm, seems to exhale. Chapter 10. Moonlight on the sleeping shelves. The workshop, tidied and warm, seems to exhale. The Wandmaker stands for a little while beside the cleared bench and does not yet move on. His hands rest lightly on the wood, palms open, as though feeling the last of the evening's labor settle into the grain beneath them. The cream linen cloth has been folded away. The polished tools sleep in their drawers. Only the lamp above the bench remains fully bright, its shaded glow falling in a soft circle over smooth timber, over the place where shavings lay not long ago, over the quiet emptiness that now feels complete. Around him, the shop holds its familiar night music. The clock ticks with the same patient measure it kept at dusk and midnight, and every hour between. The stove gives a low, almost drowsy murmur. Somewhere high in the old timber, a board answers the cooling air with a gentle creak, then is still again. Dust drifts through the lamplight, slow and pale, as if it too has grown sleepy. He turns at last, not with haste, but with the easy certainty of long habit, and goes to the nearest lamp. Its green and cream shade is warm beneath his fingers. He lowers the wick by a careful degree, and at once the room softens. Yellow light thins to amber. Shadows gather more kindly at the corners of drawers, beneath the bench, along the brass rail where the ladder waits. The shelves of slender boxes remain, but less distinctly now, as if they have drawn a coverlet of dusk over their narrow shoulders. He pauses and lets the dimmer room settle around him. Then he crosses to the second lamp, the one nearer the shelves, where labels in neat hands and older hands have long kept their places. He lowers that one too. The glow narrows. Brass loses some of its shine. The upper reaches of the shop drift farther away, becoming dark wood, then suggestion, then only height and hush. The rail ladder, guided back to its resting place earlier, stands quiet as a tall companion at the wall. With each small turning of his fingers, the shop says less and less in light, and more in outline, in scent, in remembered shape. Now the moon begins to show itself more clearly. It has been waiting at the high windows all along, patient behind the stronger lamps. As the amber pools recede, silver enters. It slips through the mullioned panes in long, cool bars and lays itself across the floorboards. It catches the edge of the counter, the lip of a drawer, the curve of a brass pull. It touches the shelves where the boxes stand side by side, cream and dove gray and brown, each one slender, each one still. The Wandmaker looks toward those shelves. He has placed one more box among them tonight. He knows exactly where it rests, though from here it is only part of the ordered row. Ash, with a slight bend kept true. Hidden fire banked quietly within. Ribbon smooth, label dry. Set among many others that wait in their own time and silence. He does not go to it again. He has already done what was needed. It is enough now simply to stand and feel the room holding it. There are nights when a finished wand gives some tiny sign from its shelf, a shimmer no brighter than breath on glass, a chime so fine it might have been imagined. Tonight, there is only stillness, and stillness is its own kind of answer. The shelves keep their counsel. The boxes sleep in their places. The old shop, lined from floor to ceiling with waiting, seems gently aware of itself. He draws one slow breath, then another. The air is cooler now above the stove's low warmth. It carries beeswax, paper, old wood, the faint mineral scent of moonlit glass. And beneath it all, the dry, comforting memory of seasoned ash, willow, holly, yew. The scents do not separate so much as rest together, layer upon layer, as they have rested here for years. His own sleeves, turned neatly down again, hold a little of them too. At the front of the shop, the mullioned window reflects more darkness than lane. Outside, the cobbles are pale where moonlight reaches them, darker where the buildings lean close. No footsteps pass, no voices rise. The lane has given itself over to night entirely. Inside, one lamp remains. It is the smallest, near the back, left low from the start. He goes to it and touches the wick with the same care he has given every other task. The flame descends, not all at once, but gradually, until it is no more than a small amber heart under the shade. It leaves just enough warmth of color to meet the moonlight without contesting it. Now the room is silver and faint gold. The bench is only a pale shape, The stool beneath it is a darker one. The shelves rise like quiet cliffs of timber and paper. The clock continues its even ticking, softened by distance and dimness, as if time itself has wrapped itself in cloth. The stove murmurs lower. Dust no longer flashes in bright air, but drifts unseen, except when a moonbeam catches one wandering mote and lets it shine for an instant before it is gone again. The Wandmaker stands in the middle of the shop, narrow-shouldered, silver-haired, his face gentle in the mixed light. He does not make a ceremony of leaving. He only looks once more, slowly, from bench to ladder, from ladder to shelves, from shelves to the high windows where the moon keeps watch. Everything is in its place. Everything is ready for rest. He moves toward the back, his steps light on the old boards. Behind him, the workshop remains as it is, the last amber glow under its shade, the moon laid softly over sleeping boxes, the rail ladder still, the tools in their drawers, the stove warm at its core, the clock patient as ever. And after even those small footsteps have faded, the room goes on breathing in wood and paper and silver light, quiet and slower still, until there is almost nothing left to notice but the moon on the shelves, and the shelves beneath the moon.